Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I am Sandy Shellis and my partner, Jennifer Hines. We have a show tonight. Now, I warn you, it might get a little heated. Maybe. But isn't that what makes the world go round? A little heat, a little disagreement, a little agreement. But we try to bring you, and we're going to try to stay as centered as we can. I
All right.
don't know about me, Jennifer, though. You might have to control me.
Okay. Okay. So,
All right.
Sandy, in a nutshell, how would you typify the show that we have tonight?
Well, it is the anniversary of the war in Ukraine. And by the graphic we have behind us, it is a lot of memorials put up by probably Ukrainians because, as we're going to show, Russians can't do this as too much. And we are in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. We are in solidarity even with the people of Russia because the people of Russia, they don't know. They're propagandized. They don't know. Plus, they have great researchers, and we miss them. We miss the scientists. But it is, and so I'll characterize it as a kind of a WASF show because, on one hand, our left is being ripped apart. On the other hand, we have very deeply held feelings and emotions on this because people are dying, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's doing it. It's well, it does matter who's doing it, but I'm saying it's crazy. It's crazy.
And I'd like to just acknowledge the comment of Hans Asperger. He said the war started in
Yeah,
2014. That's true.
Crimea.
Started with Crimea, and when the Russians took Crimea, it
And
didn't
there's
just
a
start a year ago.
no, it there's a whole lot of history before that, and I have been working to learn all the history. I am in no way a historian. I am in no way a history. I didn't even take it, this kind of history in college. However, there's a lot to learn, but I caution because there's part of this show is about so much bullshit out there. You cannot learn your history of all of these areas from YouTube.
Hmm.
And you certainly have to take everything with a grain of salt because these days with social media, Jennifer, everyone has an angle and everyone has a grift. Except for me because we're not monetized. And we don't get paid by anybody. We're too small and we're not democratic
No
operatives. And
grifters here.
no grifters here. We are the no grifter network. But the thing is, it's a very emotional, it's very emotional. And all right, I'm going to ask Lisa a question. CIA backed coup overthrew the Ukrainian government in 2014. Let me ask you a question, Lisa. Are you do you feel Vladimir Putin is in the right? I'm just asking you the
Oh, you're
question
really
because
going there.
I'm going there because I
You're
have a
really going
point I'm
there.
going to make, and that's all I'm going to make. Is it's going to be a quick one. I mean, it's not. I don't want to fight with Lisa or anything because there is a lot of history, and there could be truth to what she says. I am not the arbiter of exact history, and she's right. War is always wrong. That we love. We love that. War is always wrong. And the only, I won't go any further then because it wasn't an argument I wanted to get into. Nothing. I think I just wanted to cross a point and see if anyone else might have agreed with me. That's all. But we'll go there. later. Let me quickly say hi, Singing Way, and astrologer, climate witness, and Lisa Hamilton, and Trulia Gaston, Kim, and Old Sage Joe, and hi Hans, honey, and BB, and Kim, and you know what? Hans lives in a different country, and he has a different take on a lot of this stuff, also. So, that's why we have a worldwide audience. Devon and Dee Dee and Rollins Witch, my train guy, John. All right. If I missed any of you, I am so sorry. But so Jen, and we do have an overview. And if you want to go through, we may not be reading all of these, but there's a reason for them being there. So Jen, give us the 20,000 foot overview.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so we're going to start out with an article from CNBC. Defense manufacturers cashing in on Trump's global arms push.
That's mine.
This
That's
just
mine.
it's yours. It's
2018.
You go ahead and oh yeah, that is 2000.
Yes.
What the hell?
Oh, what the hell? It has a point. I have a point.
Okay. I believe you. I believe you. Okay, and then we're heading over to The Guardian. Russia protests, more than 1,300 arrested at anti-war demonstrations. So more than 500 were detained in both Moscow and St. Petersburg. And so we're going to take a look at that and what's that all about. Then we're going to run over to AP News and the article there, Russia's Year of War, Purge of Critics, Surge of Nationalism. So we'll take a look at that. We're looking at all angles. And then we've got a little article from Medusa. Now, you guys know that Medusa, in this case, is not the lady with the snakes growing out of her head.
No.
Nothing like that.
No.
This is the kind of, I guess, revolutionary Russian news service that people are actually dying for. It's very risky to be a truthful reporter in Russia. So we're going to take a look at that. And this is February Lasts a Year, Day of Remembrance and Sorrow. So that would be February 24. So spontaneous memorials appeared in Russia on the anniversary of the war, anti-war pickets in some cities. So we've got that. And then Al Arabia News, which is actually out of Iran. And this one, I have to accept cookies. Yes, I accept cookies.
Then we'll clean them off later or eat them.
Whatever. So this one here, Ukraine invasion, police detain anti-war protesters across Russia. Okay. And then we've got another, that looks like the same one. That's the same one, excuse me. Okay, then we've got one from Al Jazeera. Russian saboteurs seek to hamper Putin's war machine. So anti-Putin activists try to slow down Russia's war in Ukraine and say they are willing to step up their violence.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And then protests in Russia. This is from World News in worldtrend.com. Protests in Russia denounce invasion of Ukraine. Anti-war demonstrations held around the world. Hashtag World News, hashtag World Update. Anyway, we're going in and we're going to take a look at that article. Then our pièce de la résistance, Barron's Observer. Let the whole world know that there are people like my daughter. Snitches and a sledgehammer. The case of Alesya Krivtsova.
And that's what we're going to end with. And then now we get more people joining. I've got the little, this actual little thing I put together, it kind of gives you a bunch of different things to think about, and it's quick. So here we go. Yes, I hope this is the one. Yes, it is.
Ukraine's not even a country. It's kind of a concept. It's not even a country. So when we talk about sovereignty and self-determination, it's just a corrupt area where the Clintons have turned into a colony where they can steal money out of.
Attacking a democracy. I see Russia attacking Ukraine. I see Russia saying, Putin saying, I'm the victim. I'm the victim. Except Putin is the one that amassed, 400 tanks outside of Kiev and tried to invade and bomb the crap out of it and failed miserably and has absolutely no victories to bring home to his people. It's just such a sick, twisted place. It's shocking to me. It's really, it's an amazing thing to see, Americans who pretend to really care about, free democracies around the world being invaded by a guy who literally demolished.
The Chinese yuan is replacing the dollar in Moscow. Chinese currency now accounts for fully 1/5 of all trades on the Moscow Stock Exchange. That's up from less than 1% last year. So these are deep and growing economic ties, and they're formal. The thing about economic ties, however, is that they lead inexorably to military ties. So it shouldn't surprise you that China is actively helping Russia in the war against NATO, which we are leading. In other words, the country with more ships than any navy in the world has united with the country that has more nuclear-armed ICBMs than any country in the world to fight us through proxy in Ukraine. Well, that's scary. And the thing is, everybody involved seems to know it's scary and just how scary it is. Our leaders understand that their push for total war with Putin, which is unnecessary, could lead to the destruction of...
Did you know that people are told that migratory birds spread diseases to kill Slavic people?
Согласно документам, американская сторона планировала вести на Украине в 2022 году работы по патогенам птиц, летучих мышей и рептилий с дальнейшим переходом к изучению возможности переноса ими африканской чумы свиней и сибирской язвы.
No, because you probably do not watch Russian propaganda. But after Russia has started the war in Ukraine, almost all independent media were banned in my country and I became a foreign agent. This is a label given to independent journalists and activists by the Russian government. This is
So there you go with some thoroughly confusing information, and all created to get you to think or to get you to believe or to get you on a side. I included the Russian gal because that's her experience. They can't even do what they did. And I know from watching the young guy, 24 years old, NFKRZ, no fuckers. I've been watching him for 4 years. I've watched what's happened to him, and he had to leave Russia because he didn't want to be conscripted. So he's in Georgia, which is bordering Russia, and he can't really go anywhere. He's he worries, Lisa, in a way. Right. I think that, and a lot of us are very confused. All right, so we're going to move over and we're going to get this started with something I had to do. All right? Because I don't like Donald Trump, and I've had to listen to this bullshit from someone for a while now that, Trump is the peace president. Trump is the peace president. And I am so fucking sick of hearing that Trump is the peace president. So from 2018, the Trump administration plans to expand its Buy American program for defense hardware sales abroad. The effort is seen as one way for the president to make good on his campaign pledge of increasing manufacturing jobs. Overseas defense sales sometimes extend production lines that otherwise might be shuttered or downsized. So foreign arms sales are growing in importance to the top line of big defense firms and may get an added boost 2018 this year due to initiatives by the peace president, Donald Trump. Sales to allies and other friendly countries have also allowed American defense companies to extend production lines that otherwise might be shuttered or downsized. Trump's personal involvement in defense sales also hasn't gone unnoticed, whether touting $350 billion in weapons to Saudi Arabia last May or suggesting in November that Japan should buy more U.S.-made equipment to shoot North Korean missiles out of the sky. Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, two defensive companies with upcoming earnings reports, they stand to benefit from increased international sales over the next few years, according to analysts. A lot of recent growth in the U.S. defense sales is in missile defense systems and Lockheed's F-35 stealth fighter jets. We're seeing a global upturn in defense spending, said Peter Arment, a defense analyst at Robert W. Baird. We're seeing Europe, NATO, the Middle East, Asia, and U.S. domestic. So for defense companies, international weapon sales can sometimes be more lucrative too. And Arment said that direct arms sales from U.S. defense companies to foreign countries can have a higher margin than going through Washington's foreign military sales program. Reuters reported earlier this month that the administration plans, as parts of its new Buy American plan, to have embassy personnel help drum up billions of dollars in business overseas for the U.S. weapons industry. This is government's job in many ways, Roman Schweitzer, a Cohen defense analyst, said, and former government acquisition official told CNBC. And regardless of the administration's new plans, Schweitzer said, there are diplomats and other federal workers at embassies around the world already actively promoting U.S. defense exports. We have used foreign military sales to help friends and allies around the world and also to help U.S. defense manufacturers around the world, Schweitzer said. However, Reuters said that the White House plans will be going beyond the limited assistance now provided by overseas American military attaches and diplomats. The White House didn't respond. Remy Nathan, Vice President of International Affairs at the Aerosmith Industries Association, said Arlington, Virginia-based industry trade group representing some top American defense companies is very much in favor of enhancing the current arrangement. So specifically, the administration wants to make it easier to export U.S. defense products aboard, whether drones, aircraft, or ships. It comes at a time when the Chinese are getting more aggressive in selling weapons overseas. The Trump administration has already relaxed rules allowing more military sales to countries such as Saudi Arabia, which has been accused of war crimes by some human rights groups. So also the administration lifted human rights conditions for the arms sales to the other countries, including Bahrain. In May, when he first visited Saudi Arabia on his first foreign nation visit, the president announced a massive multi-year arms deal with the kingdom that he said would add hundreds of thousands of U.S. jobs. But some questioned whether all of the weapons were part of a new agreement. Even so, an expanded Buy American program in defense helps the administration in its efforts to boost manufacturing jobs. The U.S. had nearly $42 billion in foreign military sales during fiscal 2017, up from $33.6 billion in the previous year, according to the Defense Security Cooperation Agency. There is an exception that foreign military sales could grow again this fiscal year due to increased global tensions and efforts by U.S. allies to increase their overall defense spending. Even neutral Sweden is increasing its defense spending due to worries about a more aggressive Russia. Also, a Cold War era mentality in Sweden led the government to recently reissue information about civil defense to some 4.7 million households. Well, they had a reason why. For weapons, Sweden is looking to buy a $1.2 billion Patriot air missile defense system from none other than Raytheon. In November, Poland obtained a U.S. State Department approval on a $10.5 billion purchase of the Patriot system. Romania, another NATO country, was cleared in July to buy the Patriot system. So in all, Raytheon has built more than 220 units of the Patriot system, delivering them to customers in 14 nations worldwide. Raytheon has also benefited from recent anti-ballistic missile sales to Japan. Japan's government also recently approved the purchase of the Lockheed-made Aegis Ashore missile defense system. Raytheon's international sales made up of about 32% of its total sales in the first 3 quarters of 2017. So when it reports year-end results Thursday, it's possible the company will mark the 14th consecutive year of international sales growth. Lockheed's F-35 stealth fighter aircraft is now the driver for its foreign defense sales growth. Of the 9 original F-35 partner countries, 6 now have jets in the fleet. The planes are not manufactured only in the U.S., but also in Japan. Lockheed CEO Marilyn Hewson said in October during the previous earnings call that the company was on track in 2017 to have 30% of sales come from overseas, up from 27% in 2016. So Lockheed is scheduled to report its full year 2017 results on Monday. Lockheed won a $3.8 billion deal last year to sell F-16 upgrades and new aircraft to the government of Bahrain. According to Houston, the contract is expected to extend the F-16 production beyond 2021. Similarly, Boeing's F-15 fighter production stands to benefit the U.S. government since the U.S. government announced it last month that Qatar will buy 15 of the aircraft. Production for the FQA could start next year and extend assembly line work into 2022. So also the contract, that is good news for numerous suppliers who get work from everything from the components to the avionics and airframe systems. Now, I'm not going to play this video because I have a comment on this. Now, you hear this and people are running around, especially on the right wing and even some of our left friends, saying that Trump is the peace president. Well, does this look like he was the peace president? No. Trump is the president that is about whatever benefits him. Okay, he was. And he sold to NATO countries, which, gee, I think Tucker Carlson and all of the rest of those idiots, Marjorie Taylor Greene, have called for the dissolution of NATO. But my God, we're selling a lot to NATO countries, aren't we?
Yeah, 30% to overseas countries. And so war is big business. Raytheon's making out big. Lockheed's making out big.
Yeah,
big.
maybe I'll even show
Boeing's
this
getting into the action. All these defense contractors are just spinning up these god-awful Patriot systems as fast as they can.
And maybe I will show this now, Jen, instead of waiting. The list of defense contractors.
Go for it. Yeah.
They're all over the world. All over the world. So if you look at this, you will see, of course, the United States leads because we do. That's just what we do. And they make guns for the streets also, which I have a lot of problems with. All right. But then there's the United Kingdom, and China's making weapons all over the place, and even Russia. And Russia is going to be selling stuff to India. Okay, so it's a circular clusterfuck. Do you guys understand this? Everybody's in on it. Everybody's making a buck on this.
Singing Away says flush them all, Sandy.
Oh, really? Are we ready for a flush already? Okay, well then we're gonna start with the first flush. All right. So do you see? It's a clusterfuck, and nobody's telling the truth. And then, the American people and people all over the world, they're just they're just being bamboozled, they're being gaslit, and so it's like, all right, take a side, but really it just like the people in Russia, I may dislike certain things people say. I don't like ignorance, and I think there's a lot of it. A lot of it. But anyway, I thought this actually kind of worked then, Jen. So let's move over.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
Jen is we're just gonna do a quick one, and maybe do you want me to try the video for this one, or what do you think? We should play it. It's a little older.
I don't know, Sandy, as you wish. If you want to, we can.
Well,
Otherwise,
tell everybody what this was about, and then maybe I'll try the vid.
okay. So this is an article from The Guardian. Russia protests, more than 1,300 arrested at anti-war demonstrations. So more than 500 people were detained in both Moscow and St. Petersburg. So that's what this is about. It's very dangerous to protest in Russia. Point. Security forces detained more than 1,300 people in Russia on Wednesday at the protest denouncing mobilization, a rights group said, hours after President Vladimir Putin ordered Russia's first military draft since the Second World War. The independence of OVD Info protest monitoring group said that according to information it had collected from 38 Russian cities, more than 1,311 people had been held by late evening. It said that those figures included at least 502 Moscow and 524 St. Petersburg, Russia's second most populous city. Unsanctioned rallies are illegal under Russia's anti-protest laws.
Okay.
Russia's interior, what?
No,
Russia's
Hans was leaving.
what?
I was saying goodbye. Hans was leaving.
Oh,
All right.
okay, fine. Russia's Interior Ministry official Irina Volk, in a statement quoted by Russian news agencies, said that officers had cut short attempts to stage what it called small protests. Quote, in a number of regions, there were attempts to stage unauthorized actions which brought together an extremely small number of participants. Volk was quoted as saying, these were all stopped, and those persons who violated laws were detained and taken to police stations for investigation and establishing their responsibility. One-way flights out of Russia were rocketing in price and selling out fast on Wednesday after Putin ordered the immediate call-up of 300,000 reservists. The Vesna opposition movement called for protests, saying thousands of Russian men, our fathers, brothers, and husbands, will be thrown into the meat grinder of the war. What will they be dying for? What will mothers and children be crying for? The Moscow prosecutor's office warned that organizing or participating in protests could lead up to 15 years in prison. Authorities have issued similar warnings ahead of other protests. Wednesdays were the first nationwide anti-war protests since the fighting began in late February. AFP journalists in the center of Moscow said at least 50 people were detained by police wearing anti-riot gear on Main Street. In St. Petersburg, AFP reporters saw police surround a small group of protesters and detain them one by one, loading them onto a bus. Protesters were chanting, "No mobilization. Everyone is scared. I am for peace, and I don't want to have to shoot. But coming out now is very dangerous. Otherwise, there would be many more people," said protester Vasily Fedorov, a student wearing a pacifist symbol on his chest. I came out to the rally planning to participate in it, but it looks like they've already arrested everyone. This regime has condemned itself and is destroying its youth, said Alesya, a 60-year-old resident who declined to give his last name. Why are you serving Putin, a man who's been in power for 20 years, a young protester shouted at one policeman. I came out to say that I am against war and mobilization, Osaka Sidekhenko, a student told AFP. Why are they deciding my future for me? I'm scared for myself, for my brother, she added. Alina Skorstova, 20 years old, said that she hoped that Russians would soon understand the nature of the Kremlin's offensive in neighboring Ukraine. Quote, as soon as they really understand, they will come out onto the street despite the fear, she said. In Ekaterinburg, Russia's fourth largest city, police hauled on buses some 40 protesters who were detained in an anti-war rally. One woman in a wheelchair shouted, referring to the Russian president, "God damn bald-headed nut job." This lady's in a wheelchair shouting, "Goddamn bald-headed nut job." He's going to drop a bomb on us and we're all still protecting him. I've said enough. The Interfax news agency quoted Russian Interior Ministry saying it had quashed all attempts to organize unauthorized gatherings. All the demonstrations were stopped, and those who committed violations were arrested and led away by police pending an investigation and prosecution, it added.
All right, man. You did good one. Good on that one. I'm not going to play the video. But all right. So we have another one, and I just want to say that Russia is hard on, you can't protest essentially. But if we're not careful, it's going to happen here. And it's already happening here in the United States. And it's happening in democratic countries because of the authoritarian shift, and it's frightening. So we're going to move on to the next one. Now, I don't know, I think this is a good one, and it's a longer one, but I think this is a good night to do some of these. So I'm going to take this one, Jen. All right, so this one is AP. And then after this, we're going to be a little bit more around the world in our material. Moscow's nights display few signs of a nation at war. This is just from February 19th. Cheerful crowds pack the restaurants and bars in the Stratenka neighborhood on a recent Saturday night, watched by officers marked as tourist police. Nearby, a top-headed guide led about 40 sightseers to a 300-year-old church. There's only occasional Z, which is the symbol of Russia's special military operation, as Ukraine invasion is officially known, seen on a building or shuttered store abandoned by a Western retailer. A poster of a stern-faced soldier with the slogan, "Glory to the heroes of Russia," is a reminder that the conflict has dragged on for a year. Western stores are gone, but customers can still buy their products or knockoffs sold under a Russian name or branding. And guys, if you want to watch videos all about that, watch the NFKRZ channel. That kid does a really good breakdown of everything that's happened and what Russians are selling now in lieu of the Americans' stuff. All right, so the painful, bruising changes to Russian life require more effort to see. A broad government crackdown has silenced dissent, with political opponents imprisoned or fleeing abroad. Families have been torn apart by the first mobilization of reservists since World War II. State TV spews hatred against the West and reassuring messages that much of the world is still with Russia. Sounds kind of like what we're told, right? I mean, it's everywhere because there's no way to know everything. And Russia's battlefield deaths are in the thousands. Indeed, the war has ruined many lives, including ours, Sofia Sabatina of St. Petersburg told the Associated Press. Twice a week, she visits a detention center and to bring food and medicine to her partner, Sasha Shokalenko, an artist and musician with serious health issues. Shokalenko was arrested in April for replacing supermarket price tags with anti-war slogans. Seems so silly in the United States. We take for granted what we can do. She is charged with spreading false information about the military, one of President Vladimir Putin's new laws that effectively criminalize the public expression against the war. The crackdown has been immediate, ruthless, and unparalleled in post-Soviet Russia. Media cannot call it a war, and protesters using that war on placards are hit with steep fines. Most who took to the streets were swiftly arrested. Rallies fizzled. The rallies fizzled. There she is. She is taking her stuff. She's starting in the defendant's cage. All right. And here's other people. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate Dmitry Muratov, editor-in-chief of the influential Russian newspaper Novaya Gazeta, left, and Sergei Sokolov, his deputy, sit in a courtroom prior to a hearing in the Basmany District Court in Moscow, Russia. The newspaper was stripped of its license in an ongoing crackdown of independent media. Imagine if The Intercept was taken down, right? I mean, Counterpunch was taken down. And this is just people that, the media, Independent news sites were blocked, as were Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. A prominent radio station was taken off the air. The Novaya Gazeta newspaper, led by 2021 Nobel Peace Prize laureate Dmitry Muratov, lost its license. Skochalenko, who says she is not an activist but simply horrified by war, faces up to 10 years in prison.
Amazing.
Yeah. Prominent Putin critics either left Russia or were arrested. Ilya Yashin got 8.5 years. Yashin? That's like my maiden name, which is very Russian. Got 8.5 years. Vladimir Kara-Murza is jailed awaiting trial, and Alexei Navalny remains in prison. Entertainers opposing war quickly lost work, and plays and concerts were canceled. The fact that Putin has managed to intimidate a significant part of society is hard to deny, Yashin said. It told AP. So there's a whole lot of brainwashing going on. Well, just propagandizing, telling the citizens it's okay. But, you got to think, Jennifer, the moms know. The moms know because their sons ain't coming back. Pushing the government line. The purge of critics was followed by a splurge of propaganda. State TV suspended some entertainment shows and expanded political and news programs in order to boost that Russia was ridding Ukraine of Nazis, which a false claim, although now I will tell you after this about this whole argument I had. I think I already did. That Putin used as a pretext for the invasion, or that NATO is acting via puppets in Kyiv and that Moscow will prevail. A new structure of the world is emerging right in front of our eyes, proclaimed anchor Dmitry Kiselev in a December rant on his weekly show. The planet is getting rid of Western leadership. Most of humanity is. The messages play well in Russia, says Denis Volkov, director of the country's top independent pollster Levada Center. The idea that NATO wants to ruin Russia, or at least weaken, it has been commonplace for 3/4 of the poll respondents for many, many years. The Kremlin is pushing its narrative to the young. School children who are oh my gosh. Think about Florida and what DeSantis wants to do in the schools. Oh, God.
I saw something on the news today with all these empty bookshelves in the schools in Florida. It's horrendous, but let's not go there.
I know. We digress a little because it just like snapped in my head. But they're pushing their narrative to the young. School children were told to write letters to soldiers. Well, you know what? To be fair, we did that in grade school to the soldiers in Vietnam. And some schools designated a hero's desk for graduates fighting in Ukraine. In September, schools added a subject loosely translated as conversations about important things. Lesson plans for 8th to 11th graders, seen by AP, describe Russia's special mission of building a multipolar world order. At least one teacher who refused to teach the lessons was fired, although not mandatory. Some parents whose children skipped them faced pressure from administrators or even police. A 5th grader was accused of having a Ukraine-themed photo on social media and asking classmates about supporting the war. And she and her mother were detained briefly as administrators complained, said her lawyer, Nikolai Bobrinsky. When she skipped the new lessons, authorities apparently decided to make an example of her, he added. Surviving sanctions. The sanctions hit the economy, outperformed expectations thanks to a record oil revenues, which is a whole other part of this whole thing, of about $325 billion after the war sent energy prices soaring. The central bank stabilized the plummeting ruble by raising interest rates, and the currency is stronger against the dollar than before invasion. McDonald's, IKEA, and Apple and others left Russia. The golden arches were replaced by Vokoshenko, Itrokska, tasty, period. While Starbucks became Star Coffee with essentially the same menus. And again, you can see all those videos on NFKRZ's channel. Visa and MasterCard halted services, but banks switched to local MIR systems, so existing cards continue to work in the country. Those traveling abroad use cash. After the European Union banned flights from Russia, airline ticket prices rose and destinations became harder to reach. Foreign travel is now available to just a privileged minority, actually. So there you see. That's the McDonald's, the former Mickey D's, and the former Starbucks, and, Anyway, sociologists say these changes hardly bothered most Russians, whose average monthly salary in 2022 was about $900. Only about a third have an international passport. Inflation spiked nearly 12%, but Putin announced new benefits for families with children and increased pensions and the minimum wage by 10%. So he made his people happy. He made himself popular. MacBooks and iPhones are still easily available, and Muscovites say restaurants have Japanese fish, Spanish cheese, and French wine. Yes, it costs a bit more, but there's no shortage, said Vladimir, a resident who asked not to be fully identified for his own safety. If you walk in the city center, you get the impression that nothing is happening. Lots of people are still out and about on weekends. There are fewer people in cafes, but they're still there. Still, he admitted the capital seems emptier and people look sadder. Now, this is Russian recruits that are taking the train in Prudboy, Russia's Volgograd region, and that was in September. In the trenches or worse. Perhaps the biggest shock came in September when Kremlin mobilized 300,000 reservists. Although billed as a partial call-up, the announcement sent panic through the country since most men under 65 and some women are formally part of the reserve. Although flights abroad sold out in hours and long lines formed at Russia's border crossings, which is another thing I saw on many channels. Natalia, a medical worker, left Moscow with her boyfriend after a summons was delivered to his mother. Their income was cut in half, and she misses home. But they've decided to try it for a year, said the woman, who asked that her last name and location not be revealed for their safety. So a lot of people, they were leaving. They definitely were leaving. There was crazy traffic. It was not an easy thing to do. And they were crossing the border between Georgia and Russia. And a lot of Russians are in Georgia now. They've also gone to Dubai. They've scattered a lot of different places, the Russians. So this is recruits. They hold their weapons during a military training in the Krasnodar region in southern Russia. That was in October. War is ugly. It is ugly. But between ourselves, we're saying that once things calm down, we will be able to come back. But it wouldn't resolve the rest of it. The huge snowball is rolling downhill and nothing will be back as it was, Natalia said. Draftees complaining of poor living conditions at bases and shortage of gear. The wives and mothers claim they were deployed to the front without proper training or equipment and were quickly wounded. A woman who is contesting her husband being drafted said her family life fell apart after she suddenly had to care for her children and her frail mother-in-law. It was hard. I thought I'd lose my mind, said the woman, who spoke on condition of anonymity because his legal case is continuing. Her husband came home on leave, suffering from pneumonia, and needs psychological care because he jumps at every loud sound, she said. Vasily, a 33-year-old Muscovite, learned authorities tried twice this month to deliver a summons to a former apartment where he is officially registered, although not sure if the summons was to draft him or to clear up his enlistment records, especially after a September attempt to deliver call-up papers. He does not attempt to find out. All of my friends who went to the enlistment office to figure out are in the trenches now or worse. Yeah. So, Volkov, the pollster, said that dominating sentiment among Russians is that the war is somewhere far away. It's not affecting us directly, which is, Jennifer, you have to say, I mean, Vietnam, it was far away. All these wars are far away. The populace a lot of times doesn't feel it. But if you're in Ukraine, it's not so far away.
Right.
Or in Vietnam either. It might have been far away to us, but not to the Vietnamese. So while anxiety over the invasion and mobilization came and went over the year, people were starting, feeling again that it doesn't indeed affect everyone. We're off the hook. Well, thank God we're moving on with our lives. Some fear a new mobilization, which the Kremlin denies. Yeah, that's because the Kremlin's using prisoners in the Wagner Group. And that's a whole other story about the head of the Wagner Group, who is having real problems with the head of the Russian military. And it is not, it is not pleasant. It's not pleasant. So lives lost. As the war became bogged down by defeats and setbacks, families got the worst news. A possible one love was killed. For one, it was too much to bear. She became hysterical and she started shaking when told her son was missing and presumed dead, while serving on the Moskva, the missile cruiser that sank in April. The woman who at the time spoke on condition of anonymity because she feared reprisal said she found it hard to believe he was killed. The military has just confirmed over 6,000 deaths, but Western estimates are in the tens of thousands. Putin promised generous compensations to the families of those listed as killed in action, 12 million rubles, which is about $160,000. So there they are. In November, he met with a dozen mothers, which Russian media said were handpicked among Kremlin supporters and officials, and told them of her son's death. It wasn't in vain. So with some people, it's unclear why they die, because of vodka or something else. When they are gone, it is hard to say whether they lived or not. Their lives passed without notice, he told her. But your son did not live. Did live. Do you understand? He achieved his goal. That's what is being told. So it's very sad Jennifer, that it's really about the people. It's all of this stuff we read about, everything that happens, it's the people. The people. That's who are the hurt ones. And it's damn sad. It really is.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's the Russians are hurting, the Ukrainians are hurting, heck, the Americans are hurting because they have to watch this and be so torn by social media and the channels. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Why don't you take on this one?
Shall we move along? This is actually very, very short. Why don't I take on the next couple, actually, since this is just a paragraph. This is from Medusa, was originally in Russian, in Cyrillic. It has a translate, so it has been translated. So it's only a paragraph, but just to make the point, February last year, Day of Remembrance and Sorrow. So, on the anniversary of the start of the war, residents of many cities in Russia lay flowers at monuments associated with Ukraine and also go out to single pickets. That doesn't translate well. They do so despite threats of detention and hefty fines. Since the invasion of Ukraine, the Russian authorities have passed a series of repressive laws, effectively making constitutionally guaranteed peaceful protest impossible. Those who oppose the war are mainly persecuted for discrediting the armed forces. During the year, according to Media Zone's estimates, the courts received about 6,000 protocols. Participants of the pickets of February 24th, as well as those who simply laid flowers at the monuments, were detained by the police in many cases. And that's all there is to that. So it shows just how repressive this regime is.
But yet, Jennifer, we are being told that we can't believe anything. And it's almost like getting on social media. Jen, I've equated it's going to become like going to the arcade. When you go on social media with AI and everything coming up, it's going to be just like the arcade and you can't believe a thing on it. Then what? Then what? So this next one, Jennifer, you could take. It's the Iranian news.
Yep, this is Al Arabia News. Ukraine invasion, police detain anti-war protesters across Russia. Russian media and rights groups say police in various parts of Russia have detained protesters who took to the streets with anti-war slogans or flowers to mark the first anniversary of Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. At least 8 people were detained on Friday after taking flowers to a monument to victims of political repression in Yekaterinburg, Russia's 4th largest. Let me see if I can get this. Yekaterinburg. I'm embarrassed that I can't say that.
Oh, but don't worry about it. Can anybody in the audience say it?
Yeah. So, well, apparently this is Russia's 4th largest city, according to OVD Info Legal Aid Group, which tracks political arrests. It is said that 2 people were detained in St. Petersburg after bringing flowers to a monument honoring Ukrainian poet Taras Shevchenko. In Siberia, 5 people were detained in the city of Barnaul, including a man who picketed a central square with a placard reading, "Stop being silent," the Sibir Really news outlet said. It said a woman in the city of Komos on Amur was detained for protesting with a banner saying, "We're mourning. Forgive us. We screwed up our country." Russians all across the country actively protested against the war in Ukraine during the first weeks of invasion. Large rallies quickly fizzled after thousands were detained, but single-person protests and detentions persisted throughout the year. And that was it. I mean, it was just a short little
Mm-hmm.
article, but it shows you how absolutely repressive these regimes are at this
They
point.
are. But
Really, really repressive.
they're all, yeah. But we've also, we've tried to pick more world, articles from all over the world. And of course, as I was doing this, I was told that every single thing that I picked was anti-Russia, was American American paid, NATO sponsored, whatever. I mean, I'm so sick of it. So here's the Al Jazeera article. Go for it.
Okay. Al Jazeera, Russian saboteurs seek to hamper Putin's war machine. Anti-Putin activists try to slow down Russia's war in Ukraine and say they are willing to step up the violence. And I think we'll see some of the same themes we've already talked about thus
Yeah.
far. On the night of January 4th, a section of track along the Trans-Siberian Railway in Russia's Krasnoyarsk region was blown up. The rail line was used by the Russian army to transport supplies to Ukraine. A photo and video clip of an explosion ripping through the railway bridge were posted on Telegram by an organization calling itself BOAK, the combat organization of Anakra communists. During the Ukrainian intelligence, this was the sixth such, according to Ukrainian intelligence, this was the sixth such incident this year after 40, during all of 2022, suggesting that anti-war resistance in Russia is growing bolder. Since the invasion of Ukraine in February, Russian occupied territories there have experienced regular sabotage from the Ukrainian resistance. But in Russian Belarus, a secret network of activists is also doing its best to slow down the Russian war machine. We are not only against Putin and the war, but also against Russian imperialism and against existing capitalist system of oppression in general, a BOAK representative told Al Jazeera. BOAK describes itself as an anarcho-communist, meaning it seeks a decentralized society in harmony with nature, with a focus shifted away from profit and onto the needs of the people. It rejects all forms of inequity and oppression. This puts it at odds with the Russian Communist Party, which embraces Stalinism and enthusiastically rallies behind Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Quote, "We are disgusted by this fratricidal bloodbath. We believe that only by halting Putin's aggression can we hope to stop and never have this happen again," said the BOAK representative. The government's defeat in this imperialist war opens up to opportunities for the revolutionary movement, giving people the chance to realize how oppressed they were and what needs to change. We understand that these goals can only be achieved through revolutionary change. In order to be implemented effectively, it is necessary to have an underground organization operating using partisan and guerrilla methods. BOAK and other Russian anti-war groups such as Stop the Trains call themselves partisans after resistance to Nazi occupation during World War II, when the fighters hid in the forest of Belarus, Ukraine, and Western Russia and launched attacks on German forces. BOAK claims to have been in existence for 10 years, but it said before the war in Ukraine, it largely spent its time building its network and gathering resources. In 2019, BOAK claimed responsibility for burning down a cell phone tower owned by Turkish company in Kyiv over Ankar's incursion into northern Syria. BOAK says it consists of several dozen cells of various sizes that operate independently, but the central network may help coordinate or publicize their actions. The central organization follows a horizontal command structure, meaning that decisions that affect everyone in the organization are made by consensus. The group locates their targets through open source websites such as Wikimapia, and posts the results of its work on Telegram, along with detailed instructions for other would-be saboteurs. In August, Telegram was fined by Russian authorities for refusing to take down anarchist material. A favorite target of BOAK is railroads, which the Army uses to move supplies to the front line. They are the blood vessels that feed Russian aggression, the representative explained. It is along them that soldiers, equipment, and ammunition are delivered. Stop them, and the Russian army will choke without resources. At first, Russian authorities tried to downplay the partisans' activities, blaming derailment on faulty train lines, until Russian citizens started being arrested for committing acts of sabotage. Other targets have included army recruitment centers, police stations, National Guard buildings, and ruling United Russia's party offices. Since the start of the war, scores of draft offices and government buildings have been set alight, usually with Molotov cocktails, according to the independent Russian media net Mediazona. It's not clear how many of these fires were directly orchestrated or inspired by BOAK. Some were caused by arsonists of various political persuasions and unaffiliated individuals on their own initiative. While we can always be skeptical of claims, what we do know is claims of attacks and proof of those attacks, including photos and videos, are frequent enough that certainly attacks are occurring quite frequently, perhaps several per week, said Jeff Hahn, a non-resident fellow at the New Lines Institute think tank, told Al Jazeera. Most, however, have very minimal impact, delaying but not stopping mobilization of reservists from certain regions and hampering the movement of supplies to the front, Han said. However, from a moral perspective, the impact is much larger. The regime knows that the war is making people more willing to fight them directly, and Russian soldiers at the front know people behind the lines are against them. So lethal force. Although the group has not yet carried out any assassinations, it is not against the use of lethal force. Instead, it would only target state security officials. It takes care to minimize the risks to passerby by targeting railways near military targets where civilian trains are unlikely to travel. We consider the destruction of oppressors of the people quite accessible, the spokesperson said. Serious doubt has been cast on the reports of assassination plots by other groups. In August, Darya Dugina, a journalist and daughter of ultranationalist philosopher Alexander Dugin, died in a Moscow car bombing, likely meant for her father. The Kremlin accused Kyiv of being behind her death, but Ilya Pomeranov, an exiled former member of Russia's parliament, is now based in Kyiv, claimed it was the work of National Republican Army, NRA, a secret organization dedicated to the overthrow
We're
of
for
Putin.
fro.
Too many words. However, historian Sergei Radchenko told Al Jazeera that NRA does not exist. Okay. Persistent rumors to this effect, when they are not part of some PSYOP operation, merely point to the people's frustration with the seeming political stability of Putin's regime and suggest wishful thinking, which unfortunately is not rooted in any evidence, Radchenko said. In April, 6 members of the outlawed National Socialism White Power group were arrested by security services after allegedly plotting to assassinate TV pundit Vladimir Solovyov, a vocal
Soviet.
cheer Solovyov,
Soviet.
a vocal a vocal cheerleader of Putin and the war.
I
While
think
the
it's my
neo-Nazi
Russian blood, Jennifer.
what?
It's my Russian blood. With these names, it must be.
Well, the neo-Nazi group has thrown Molotov cocktails at
Shigori.
draft off. There are doubts over the official version of events in the supposed Solyov plot, with media reports suggesting alleged crime scene was clumsily staged. Han said the group was engaged in anti-war activities and have a wide range of ideologies that do not have a united vision for post-Putin Russia, even if as they unite against the president. It's hard to see these actions, real or otherwise, being the beginning of something bigger, Han said. However, there is room for escalation. It is likely as time goes on, we will see tradecraft improving and growing effectiveness in the attacks. Railroad saboteurs have been active in Belarus. Although it's not formally taking part in the war, the country is being used by Russian forces as a logistics hub. In Belarus, a number of railway saboteurs have been convicted of terrorism, which since May carries the death penalty. The last days of December, Putin signed legislation into law that punishes the crime of sabotage with up to life term in prison, up to 20 years for aiding, training, or organizing saboteurs, and up to 10 years for being part of a sabotage group. But BOAK said it is determined to continue its struggle for the overthrow of Putin. We understand that such transformations do not happen overnight.
Wow. That was pretty heavy.
Yeah.
And we've tried to make this show, it's been a heavy show. There was, I don't know. We've got another one. I don't know if we're going to read this whole thing. It was just another country. I know that a lot of you say, in Al Jazeera is Qatar is the United States, whatever. This one is another one, and this was protests in Russia, denounce invasion. It's the same. It's really the same kind of thing. Just talking about problems with being able to express yourself in that country at all. And basically that's it. But we have a really good one from, and I want to do this one, Jen, and we can tag team it. You can do it, from our old friend over at the Barron's Observer. And this is the human part.
Mm-hmm.
This is the human. Let the whole world know that there are people like my daughter. Snitches and a sledgehammer. The case of Alesya Krivtsova. So what do you say? Me or you?
You want me to read it?
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is about a 20-year-old student from Arkhangelsk, and she faces 10 years in prison for anti-war protests. She's 20 years old.
Not even protests. Posts.
Posts. Oh, anti-war posts.
Posts.
Just for doing some posts, she, as a 20-year-old student, has now got 10 years in prison. She has been reported to the police by a criminal who dreams of killing gays. Oh my God.
Which they don't like there. And Vladimir Putin talks about it openly with people, how the West is decadent and how the West has gay people and an LGBTQ movement and how horrible it is. And, basically that we are just pretty much the scourge of the earth.
Okay, yeah. So on February 12th, Alesya Krivtsova, a student of the Arctic Federal University, or NARFU, celebrated her 20th birthday under house arrest with an electronic bracelet on her ankle. Alesya has been charged with discrediting the Russian army and justifying terrorism, and she has been put on the Federal Register of Extremists and Terrorists. Barron's Observer spoke to Alesya's mother, Natalia Krivtsova, during the conversation. Natalia is in the same apartment in Severodinsk with her daughter, but Alesya cannot be asked any questions. In addition to house arrest, the court forbade the student to use any means of communication. Alesya and her mother have opposed the war in Ukraine from the very beginning. But Natalia was sure that nothing had threatened their family because they did not violate anything. They simply called a spade a spade. But one day, Alesya, as her mother put it, did a terrible stupidity. On May 9th, she put up leaflets reading that there were World War II veterans also in Ukraine. Alesya was identified by surveillance cameras and found and held by the police for 10 hours. She was dragged out of the house almost in her underwear. She was not allowed to call either a lawyer or her family. They did not give her any food. They threatened that I'd be fired. They threatened to send her to prison. In the end, they forced her to apologize to the Russian armed forces on camera. Of course, she was scared and agreed, as everyone who got there did. This video hadn't surfaced anywhere yet, obviously waiting in the wings. When I saw her, she was completely broken, but she came out and her first words were, "Now I understand that everything was right," Natalia recalls. Back then, it all ended in an administrative case, but in December 2022, criminal charges were brought up. On December 26, security forces broke into the apartment where Alesya lived with her husband. The student was laid face down on the floor, and one of the uniformed men loomed over her with a sledgehammer. It was a hello from the Wagner PMC, Krivtsova, or Wagner. Maybe it's Wagner PMC.
No, they're just horrible.
Krivtsova was explained as she was driven for interrogation. Alesya is charged with discrediting the army and justifying terrorism. The prosecution believes that the post of Krivtsova's friend Ilya Luskakov is about university forcing its student to participate in rallies and support the so-called referendums in the occupied territories of Ukraine, discredited the army. Alesya shared this post in a private chat with the fellow student, accompanying it with a one-word comment, konchelki. It is derived from the word konets, meaning end or finish, and can loosely be translated as someone beyond redemption. And then it shows the post that she actually put up, and this is what got her 10 years in prison. They carried out psychological and linguistic examination of the word konchelki, producing a 20-page report which stated the word negatively characterizes the Russian armed forces, Natalia explained. In short, the armed forces were offended by the word addressed to the leadership of the university and the students who had gone to the rally. In Alesya's case, there are also publications from the VK social media network and screenshots from Instagram. Krivtsova posted instructions for surrender for soldiers and pictures of dead people on her social media. Her fellow students shared these posts with each other in another chat that Alesya was not in. The students said that it was necessary to report Krivtsova and discussed best how to do this. Oh, little snakes in the grass. So the Barron's Observer has screenshots of these exchanges.
Yeah.
Quote, I read and reread this exchange for 40 minutes. Then I called my daughter and I said, Alesya, it will be bad. I realized that people perceived reporting others as something normal, said Natalia. Krivtsova was placed under house arrest for an attempt to buy tickets to the south of Russia. Her family claims that Alesya did not buy them and she was physically unable to travel anywhere because of a torn page in her passport. They don't know where the tickets came from. But what is known is who reported the alleged escape plans. It was Timur Bulatov, a homophobe from St. Petersburg who heads the first moral Russian front and foundation for the struggle for morality. What a freak job.
They are patterning themselves after the Americans.
And who had earlier been convicted of misappropriation. Bulatov presented himself as a metal artist, but journalists call him Russia's main snitch. He features as the initiator or applicant in many criminal cases across the country. Quote, when it got over 20, I stopped counting, said Bulatov. His main target is LGBT community and anti-war activists such as Alesya Krivtsova. Bulatov claims that it was he who initiated the case against Krivtsova. He called the police and told them about the students' posts. They had a look and said, yes, there are elements of a crime. There is a justification of terrorism and a lie about the special military operation, and we will find a claimant here ourselves. Bulatov said it was him who reported Alesya's intention to go abroad. He used one of his several fake accounts on Telegram messaging app to get into a thematic chat where Krivtsova case was discussed. Quote, it was a chat of fugitive lesbian feminists who are hiding from criminal prosecution in Georgia, the snitch said with a laugh. What a fuckwad.
Yeah, a good word, Jennifer. Fuckwad.
That you can't give everyone the opportunity to leave without a demonstrative punishment. Krivtsova should be all about lovey-dovey, but she does all sorts of crap instead. I have no idea what he's talking about. According to Bulatov, he has contact persons in every major city, mainly in counter-extremism police units. I don't write complaints. I just call directly, say what is needed to be done, and send out a link to a messaging app and the material that needs to be worked on. And that's it. So he just basically goes around collecting all this stuff and sending, look at this fuck job. Look at him. What a jerk. Bulatov says he gets the material from comrades in arms and acquaintances. According to him, he does this work on a voluntary basis. We need to clean up the country from an internal enemy. At the same time, he does not like being called a snitch. He believes that snitching is when people complain about him, when he is only reporting crimes. Oh, what a jerk.
Yeah.
Bulatov calls Alesya Krivtsova an LGBT activist, although the student does not consider herself one. Referring to his psychiatric consultants, Bulatov complains that pedophilia flourishes among homosexuals, and that is who they commit the majority of sex crimes against children. This guy's got to be.
No, he's watching Christian right-wing fascist social media in America.
Yeah. On his posts, he lashes out mercilessly at his victims. And talking to Barron's Observer, Bulatov admitted he had dreams of being allowed to kill gays.
Wonderful.
The man happily describes exactly how he would dispose of an LGBT people, but finished by saying that he is a law-abiding citizen and does everything by the law. The fighter for public morality was on the federal wanted list for several years for embezzlement of funds in the company he worked for. Bulatov was also accused of robbing women he was in a relationship with. Oh, he sounds choice.
He's a real piece of shit.
jerk. Somebody should put this dog down. More recently, in December 2022, Bulatov provoked a major car accident. Journalists claimed that Bulatov had his driver's license taken from him and was drunk when he got behind the wheel. Timur Bulatov is not the only person involved in Krivtsova's case. Names of several NARFU students are being mentioned in the news media networks. Roman Hussein, Daneli Bugay, and Viktor Bayev. They discussed the idea of reporting Alesya in a private chat, and perhaps they did. Bulagi's name was brought up by the investigators in court. Young man had complained to them that he was being bullied. At the end of December, Alesya's husband, Ilya Melkov, also a NARFU student, was asked to come to the university under the pretext of meeting with one of the professors. Instead, he was met by a professor of the Police Center for Combating Extremism, who Ilya had seen at the search a few days before. He asked me to speak on camera and say, I don't consider people who are reported on the internet to be snitches as snitches, said Ilya in an interview with the Barron's Observer. I said I wouldn't say that, but I was still so scared, so the video was recorded after all. We compiled the text jointly with the police officer. I said there was no reliable information about the reports, and there is no need to show any aggression towards these people. Let the law enforcement deal with it. So this video has not been made public either. The policeman demanded that Melkov not talk about the meeting anywhere. Ilya said he's afraid of the consequences, but he told his story anyway because he is sure that there is nothing to punish him for. The students who allegedly reported Alesya Krivtsova study at the Faculty of History. Bayev and Bugari are members of an airsoft group that presents itself as a military patriotic squad. Natalia Krivtsova emphasizes that they do not know for certain who exactly reported her daughter and whether these reports even existed. The Barron's Observer wrote to Bayev, Hussein, and Bugay, asking them to comment on their involvement with the Krivtsova case. Bayev read the message but did not respond. The other two haven't even read their messages, but Hussein then restricted who can write to him. So Freedom for Alesya Krivtsova is the name of the Telegram channel about her criminal case. It was created and is run by another native of Arkhangelsk region, Ilya. It's too many Russian words. Sorry, guys. Ilya.
It's okay, cutie.
He also organized fundraising campaign to pay for her lawyer. According to Ilya, hundreds of people agreed to help. Some wired as many as 20,000 to 30,000 rubles, while some sent a few tens of rubles, the last money the activist believes. So Leshukov is the same age as Alesya. He was one of the first in Arkhangelsk region to face persecution for his anti-war stance. In March, his apartment was searched several times, after which he left the country and is now in Georgia. Natalia Krivtsova says her daughter is supported by a huge number of people. When all this horror happened, a lot of people heard her, said Natalia Krivtsova. In fact, there are doubters. And for those who know Alesya, everything has turned around and they began to change their position. People write, call, express words of support. Earlier, it was just the two of us, me and Alesya. And it turns out there are a lot of us. That's a lovely picture, isn't it?
Yes. I've had it on for a while.
Yeah.
Well, that is...
Yeah, I think that's enough. You know, it goes on a little bit more, a few more paragraphs, but you get the idea.
Oh yeah. It's been an interesting bunch of articles we put together, and you cannot question the government in Russia. And we better be careful in the United States what we wish for.
Yeah, no kidding,
We
right?
just better. All right, let's see what questions we have. Da, 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 da. Yeah, profits for war profits. Yeah, well, that's of course, and we don't disagree with that at all. No, everybody's making money, and I'll show you a picture, guys. Actually, if you want to see it, I'm pretty sure I have it up here. There's the next big war, but actually, it's not going to be a war, but it's the polar power play, which is way more than for this show. But all these countries, are going to have a say. They want to say in the polar regions because of what? Fossil fuels, shipping lanes, and if anybody wants to just really think that we are going to get off fossil fuels anytime soon, when the Arctic is the last frontier, and there are in Russia, I mean, they're building their stuff. I don't know what I was looking everywhere, Jennifer, for new updated information on their bases, and you can't find it because we can't get Russian information anymore. And you know that, like even the Barron's Observer. I mean, he's not in Russian. And remember, they were the Russian speaking, they were the Russian paper. They have, and now they can't even go over there anymore. And of course, then there's those people that are going to say, well, they're a NATO country. All right. Devon, a general strike would be very difficult to pull off in USA, but a coordinated group of cities is doable. I'd strike for the right reasons. All right. Sounds like you were having some kind of conversation in there. Hi, Colonello. 6.5 billion people not living in the West are pro-Russia by 70%. Send me the link for that statistical analysis. I'd love it. Because, yes, we live in a huge world. And there's so much, again, this show is about propaganda. And the propaganda, if you look at social media, is anti-American sentiment all over the world. You see that, Jennifer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, geez, at the, what was it? The Rage Against the War Machine rally, there were people that were flying Russian flags in D.C. Maybe I'm showing my age, but when I was protested against Iraq and I went to D.C. both times, we weren't flying anything. We really weren't flying Iraqi flags or Iranian, and no flags. Just it wasn't like that. Anarcho-communism keeps getting run over by capitalist militarists who own the money armies are paid with and are used to spread their influence. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. We are so fucked. Okay, Singing Way. I just talked to a friend in Brazil. He said the new regime is like Mussolini. People are being jailed by the hundreds only for speaking their minds. I have not read anything about Lula's regime doing that. If you would please send me a link, I would love a link to that. Because Lula is actually, you wouldn't think Lula's presidency would do that, but then they are up against the fascists. So we'd have to know what context, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me see, guys. Let's see. Where are you? Hi, Nadia, for being here. Oh, my gosh. I had a great conversation with Nadia in the Discord chat last night, and she got me going, and oh, my gosh. I got onto this, but I was in so many different places. So, Jen, what do you think?
Well, I think it's a big fucking mess.
Yeah, okay. That's another one. Yeah, clean up the mess.
Yeah.
Hey, what about the biofuels? Oh, yeah, biofuels. What are we talking about? Biofuels. I don't even know if there's a war over biofuels. I think there's a war. There's going to be, the next is going to be, like I said, the Arctic. When this all gets, look at all that. There's so much to drill up there. And Russia has 53% of the coastline. So they've got the most. Plus, Jennifer, don't they sit on the Security Council up there, the Arctic Security Council? I think they do. So, all right. Hi, Giant Curve. Of course, I'm going to answer your question. As I see it, Trump does not mind if Putin were to take over Ukraine and is isolationist, thus, per the U.S. But hawk against China, it is a combination. Interesting. I have to put some thought into that one. Well, what do you say, Jen? Are we going to leave everybody with all this information we just dumped on them, whether they agree with us or not in our choices? It is the 1-year anniversary. People have died, and that's, and people are paying tribute. And we are certainly not going to not do that, not show that.
Yeah. No, it's a big mess, and I'm really glad that, we can make posts here and not get thrown in jail for 10 years. I mean,
Yes.
that's really horrible. 20-year-old student having to go to jail for 10 years.
Yeah.
Who knows if she'll ever come out, right? Once you go into one of those places in Russia. So we're fortunate that we can speak as freely as we can here among ourselves and not have some big burly policeman showing up and throwing us down on our stomach and threatening us with their sledgehammer or something.
And rape.
Like that.
Don't even forget the rapes that are going on, and it's going on. I don't care what anybody says. These people are hideous, and they've emptied the prisons in Russia. Sorry, don't delude yourself that there aren't a bunch of rapists out there either. Sorry. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, everybody, for sticking with us through this pretty weighty topic. And,
it was a weighty topic, and I can't wait to see all of the comments we're going to get for people that couldn't watch us. Yeah. Oh. Hi, Marnie. International crime syndicates pissing as governments. Dr. Sarah Kendzior foretold it all. Posing as governments. And Nadia, thank you. Thank you for last night. Yes, yes, yes. I know she meant posing. She fixed it. But they're pissing. Governments are pissing on each other also. So, Marnie, thank you so much. All right, guys. We're done. We are done. We'll see you next Friday. And like I always say, I don't know when I'll be here. If I'll do a Tuesday night show, we will see how I feel. And I'm going to tell you right now, I would love, love, love to just flush the whole war away.